winning 90% of your new business because you have some sort of incredible value.
I'm going to take a bit of a different angle.
I've got a budget this big. I'm going to give it to you because you have a really killer plan.
You give a Red Bull to a turtle, what do you expect?
I think that's a dead turtle. So let's move on to...
E-break. Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers.
Does your current premium finance company lock you into long-term agreements? That's because they don't want you talking to us. At IFS, we win your business the good old-fashioned way, with customer service. I know you don't always have to use a premium finance company, but when you do, you should use IFS. Cheers.
Hi there, and welcome to another episode of the Digital Insurance Pint podcast. As always, I'm your host, Tom Reed, and I'm joined by my colleagues, Steve Earle, CEO of Jeep Insurance and Bald Insurance. Hey, Steve.
Hello.
And Adam Mitchell, CEO of Mitch Insurance.
Hello.
And Jeff Roy, CEO of Excalibur Insurance.
Yes, thanks, guys.
Today, we have two special guests from down south. First off, Chris Paradiso, and secondly, Anurag Shah. Thanks for joining, guys. Anyway, Anurag and Chris, maybe I can get you guys to introduce yourselves.
An everyday retail small agency out of Connecticut here in the U.S., and we do write in 44 states. Been doing this for roughly 25 years and thoroughly enjoying it. And we do have a specialty market in something is a little different than the typical agency, is we insure the FedEx trucks that are independent contractors and roughly insure between 20 and 30,000 vehicles that are on the road.
Wow.
Yeah, I've heard FedEx always gets their insurance from small agencies, so I think you were lying about that part.
Chris is a little modest. You'll find out quickly. Very modest.
Anurag, can we get your bio here?
Thanks so much, Tom. Appreciate you guys inviting me. I'm Anurag, CEO and co-founder of Donna AI. My background's I'm an engineer by education, but most of my colleagues and especially my co-founders don't believe I can code. But I promise you I can. This is my second startup. We've been doing this for a little more than 10 years now across different geographies, and looking forward to chatting about it with you guys. So thanks.
There's a lot of people out there claiming to be AI experts. Seems more and more every day based on my social media feeds. How do we know that you're actually AI experts and Donna truly is AI?
Yeah, that's a good question. A professor of mine in college once told us that artificial intelligence is no match for natural stupidity, right? So that is one test you can do. But more importantly, interesting for everybody, AI almost is probably very synonymous to having a chat box that answers your questions. And this is thanks to ChatGPT and OpenAI making it popular. But, AI has been there for 40 plus years. It's not new. And I tell everybody, I actually studied AI in college as a elective subject. So it was already taught when I was young. So it's definitely not new. From our perspective, what we do is essentially using AI is looking at a lot of data and identifying patterns and trends out of that, helping agents and brokers understand their data. Whether you like to call it AI or whether you like to call it machine learning or you want to find any other term for it, what we are really doing is helping agents and brokers grow their revenue using the data that they already have, right? So, leaving the terminology aside, the core of the platform is focused on ensuring that we look at data, we understand different patterns that exist, and helping predict some sort of a behavioral aspect of the consumers and say who's going to renew or who is at risk or what are they likely to buy. And we'll get into more details of it as we chat. But hopefully that answers your question of, is it real AI? I think the only way is to find out and use it, and whether it's AI or not. If it makes your business better, then it's good for you, right?
So, gentlemen, what the heck is Donna AI in layman's terms?
In layman's terms, I would say it's a revenue acceleration platform. So it is a platform that looks at your data and helps you find revenue opportunities, right? So if you are interested to grow your business as an agency, as a broker, and you already have data, which I'm assuming everybody does, then you really use this platform to say, hey, this is where I can grow my revenue with. And this is from a platform perspective. Chris is obviously one of our power users in his team. I'll let him add to it. But essentially, in simple words, no matter, you can leave all the technology jargon aside, the focus is on helping you grow your business and retain your customers, right? That's really the focus.
I think that's a good thing to double underline for a second. So you're here representing Donna AI as a developer and built this thing, and Chris more so as a power user of the thing. And this isn't something that's prolific in Canada. I know Jeff's been talking about Donna a bunch and suggesting we need to get exposure to this and see it. And it was kind of going over all of our heads for a while until either yesterday or the day before, must have been yesterday, my very old school shareholder on the East Coast brought it up and said, hey, what do you know about this? And so it was a very odd end around that he had a consultant in the US that recommended chatting with you. And so it got onto our radar, but I kind of wanted to just lay the groundwork of, we have two guests here and you're coming from two different angles. It rolls into my question, and you already said it, so I'll give you credit for it once, of like, who cares whether it's AI or not? But my next one is it effective, right? Like, how do we prove, call me cynical, I've long tired of our industry, at least in Canada, having tech companies that purport to do X, Y, Z all the way through, and it shows up and it kind of does X, never does Y, and Z is on a 42-year build schedule. So like, how do we, can you talk to us without the name badge of AI per se about, like, how do you double blind study this to say this thing does way better than Chris's smartest producer could, looking at the same list of data, as to predicting, the things that you predict?
Oh, and before anybody answers that, just to set the stage a little bit, Chris, as a power user, are you running a broker, an AMS, an agency management system?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And which one?
Hawksoft.
Okay.
So just to give a little snapshot of does it work? But even before I dive into that, I would tell you, as an agency that has roughly 8,900 clients, as much as it is important to write new business, in this type of market, we can write new business because the phones ring every day because of the hard market and the rates going up. More importantly is, how do we retain business? And, I think what most people look at Donna AI is, okay, we're going to write more business. We're going to write more business. Yes, you are going to write more business. It's going to identify opportunities, and I'm going to explain to you in a second how. But more importantly, it's helping me understand, how is my team doing every day on the phones and through emails with our existing clients? So that is, to me, the real importance of Donna AI, for one reason. Once you build a really good foundation, the size of the house is dictated by the foundation. And the foundation of most brokers in insurance agencies' house, especially if you've been around for 10, 15, 20 years, is really retention. That's where the real dollars and cents stand. And I know it's not the sexy thing that most people want to talk about, but if you can increase 1-2% your retention numbers, it's substantial. And how Donna is helping us do that is through the centimeter score. That is just one aspect. And a lot of people may not understand what a centimeter score is. I like to put it as the net promoter score. Everybody knows what that is, right, Tom? If Paradiso Insurance sends, Tom, can you rate us? Will you give us from 1 to 10 rating, how well we did, that comes back from Tom. That's a net promoter score because our agency produced an email out to Tom and Tom gave us the information. But on a centimeter score, because we drop every single phone call and every email goes through our AMS system, which is Hawksoft, the centimeter score in Donna AI is reading and listening to every single phone call and reading every email. So it's giving the sentiments, which is the likelihood and happiness of that client. So it actually is scoring each and every client that has an interaction with our agency, which is vitally important. If you're a broker or agent that wants to know truly how well your team is doing, and when we're not doing well, you're going to look in the mirror and take action. If you're not going to do that, Donna AI is not going to help you because it gives me the opportunities to save clients, and maybe we had either a bad communication or we failed to communicate or we dropped the ball and made an error somewhere. It's amazing.
Centimeter. And is it a play on sentiment? Like it's a sentiment analysis?
Yeah, sentiment and meter. So it's SENT, centimeter.
Right. Okay. So you're measuring the customer's sentiment through the tone and annotation of the dialogue happening on the calls. Is that right?
So let me answer that one. So the centimeter, the philosophy on that is, we are in today's day and age. Net promoter score or CSAT is great, right? You're asking the customer to give you feedback, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's actually very important. But only 7 to 8% of customers ever respond to surveys. And even within that, there is probably like a 80% bias, sample bias to unhappy customers. So usually the ones who fill surveys are the ones who are not happy. So that means you're losing everybody else giving you any feedback. So the centimeter is almost, think of it as a reverse. Like Chris said, it's a net promoter score without asking. So you are not waiting for the customer to tell you. It looks at all the events that happen in the journey of the customer from the time they became a policyholder customer on your book. So when they bought a policy, they canceled, they renewed, they had a claim, they made phone calls, they made changes, they asked for, some change of address, for example, or they asked for, a specific endorsement on the policy. All the events that occur in the journey of that customer, they are getting mapped to, almost like a stock price, and a good event is positive, a bad event is negative, and it creates a score, which basically means a centimeter score of every single policyholder in your book as of today, even the ones who don't respond to your survey, right? So if you got, like Chris said, he's 8,000 customers, you are not going to get response from 8,000 customers, but you have a centimeter score for every single one of them as of today.
What software programs do you integrate with now? Obviously, we're at Hawksoft. Are you dealing with other BMS vendors? And what VoIP systems? You obviously have to be able to tap into the phone data and the recordings into that. Is there, what vendors do you work with right now? And if you don't work with one, is it easy to get a vendor connected?
Yeah, so one of the big things that we've done recently is that we've integrated with Zapier. So any vendor who's integrated with Zapier is integrated with us, right? So most vendors, and that is something that is pretty recent. So to that extent, the list of vendors is pretty wide now as far as integrating with vendors. From an agency management system perspective, we are integrated into most of the popular ones. So, Epic, AMS 360, EasyLinks, obviously Hawksoft, Now Search, QQ Catalyst. So the top 6, at least in the US. In Canada, obviously, we haven't done any integrations yet. And that actually was, one of the conversations I had with a few agencies and brokers recently, and we are trying to explore what is the best way to get there through some of these integrations and extending it. But that's the next logical extension for us.
With the phones, Jeff, if we drop all of our phone calls in the management system, so Donna sits within the management system, you don't have to be connected with the phone system.
I really like this theory behind not requiring somebody to click and participate. It puts everybody into survey mode, regardless of whether they're wanting to participate or not. And if all of your teammates were the most empathetic, great communicators all the way through, you may not need this. But if we're honest, that's not the case. So this is a good hack. How do we validate? It must have taken you a long while to go from concept, hypothesis, concept, proof of concept, all the way to whatever Chris is using today amongst other agents. Can you talk to us a bit about that, and like what did the experimentation phase of the first prediction it gave you? Probably there was all kinds of false positives and things, and how did we get from there to here?
Yeah, great question. I'll keep this short because this has happened over several years. And our roots go into building a platform for carriers, right? So we have actually processed more than 70 million policies on our platform globally. And, we've collected data and we've looked at trends and patterns. So to answer your question, yes, it has taken a lot of time and effort and, experimentation to build it out and test it out. We've then, once we started deploying to carriers, when we started our operations in the US, a couple of people came to us and said, "Hey, this is really cool. Why are you not doing it for the agents?" And like, "Oh, we never thought of that." And that's when we started working with Chris and some of the others. And we said, okay, so we kind of retuned it to look at agency data and do the same things that it was doing for carriers, and then started working on the agents and brokers data. So it was, the roots are a lot more, longer than the few years that we've been working on the agency side. It has already looked at tons of policy and claims and other data points.
What sort of things is it looking for that would indicate somebody have a high propensity of churn or leaving? And then what do you do with that? I guess that's more of a Chris question on the second of, Donna flagged these 30 people as, is there different levels of it, or are there different flags that pull out, or what? How does it look?
So maybe before Chris answers one, and I always like to make this distinction between a sentiment or a centimeter score and a prediction. So think of it, if you open your app for checking your weather, it tells you it's 72 degrees outside, or 24 degrees Celsius outside, right? That is what it's not a prediction. It's a measure of what it is right now. The prediction says it's likely to rain tomorrow, right? So there are two different things. The sentiment score is not a prediction. It's a measure of what the sentiment is as of now. The prediction is a separate aspect on our platform. So we look at all the data and then say, okay, this customer, is that customer likely to churn in the next 30 days or in the next 60 days or in the next 90 days, right? So we are looking at a predictive model which is separate from the sentiment model, right? Sentiment is like an absolute number that tells you what is it today. Like I said, it's a temperature, whereas a prediction is more like what's likely to happen. And there are different predictive models that we've built. One is on churn, like you said, who is going to leave, right? Which is at a customer level. But take it one notch lower, it also goes to the policy level. So a customer may have multiple policies, right? It's possible that the customer stays with you but only cancels one policy out of it. So there's a churn at renewal and policy level. And then we have a cross-sell predictive model, which is saying who's likely to buy more, right? So that is a different model which says, okay, you have all these eight, and we'll take Chris today because he's on the call today, right? And you say 8,000 customers, but if you want to spend your time and money cross-selling to all of them, you're going to need a lot more money. But if I told you, go after only these 250 who are likely to buy cyber, you are much better off doing a targeted campaign to those 250 instead of trying to sell to all 8,000.
I'm curious, like, Chris, I don't know how long you've been doing this, but like to me, you might even see improvement in your sentiment by simply having the tool, and that everybody knows that you have a centimeter. It's kind of like telematics with a car. Driving behavior modifies because the driver knows that they're being monitored. Do you see a natural?
Absolutely, because inside of Donna AI, there is a tool that we can actually give it information. Was it helpful? Thumbs up. Was it unhelpful? Thumbs down. And then it gives us a box to explain what was good or what was bad. And that's the aspect of the learned AI. So, for example, I'm looking at my side screen over here on the right, and on a specific client, it's clearly stating customers with low probability of retention. So it's already alerted us on, and this is a $600,864 account that has a low probability of retention. Well, if we do nothing with that, that's a problem. But the interesting thing is when you go in and we dive into this, one of the key aspects is this is inside of one of our parcel delivery program. That gentleman isn't on SmartPay, and SmartPay is one of the key concepts to which I know in Canada I don't think you guys have workers' compensation, but this is pay as you go basically. So every week as the clients or the staff is getting paid, the workers' comp is coming out and being calculated weekly, which is a huge thing for our clients because of the audits. At the end of the year, you're not going to have this huge difference in how much money they might owe versus how much money they might get back. It's going to be more spot on. So it's already given us some helpful hints of reaching out to that client and saying, hey, reaching out to you, your renewal's coming up in the next 90 days. We would really love to see if you would be comfortable, and we'd love to show you SmartPay, show you how it works, because we think it would be very beneficial to you, because once your renewal comes up, we know that you now have to do an audit, and nobody likes an audit because we don't like what is going to come out of the audit. So it's actually giving us actionable details on what we can do to help, maintain.
Do you do any benchmarking? So I sign up for Donna tomorrow, and I've got it working. Do you tell me, you know what? I mean, this is insurance after all. Not every transaction is going to be a happy one, right? We're not selling a product that people are jumping up and down about. What will you tell me if I really suck compared to the others, or like you have data of everybody else? Where do we land? So sort of, you know what? I don't know how the meter works, but you know what, Steve? This would be best in class sentiment level, and you're here.
Short answer is yes. There is a separate benchmarking module on the platform, which you can basically compare yourselves with all other agencies as an aggregate, right? So you're looking at aggregate, you can say by location, by line of business. In commercial lines, we are better, but in personal lines, we are worse. In this part of the, in this states, we are doing better. In these states, we are doing worse. So it has a different drill down that's available. But the short answer is yes.
So Chris has been described as a power user of Donna. So Chris, you've obviously put a lot of effort into learning yourself, getting your team up, skilled up, using what's coming out of it. Anurag, when you look at other agent clients, presumably there's a whole spectrum of those who are starting and getting into it and getting good at it and so on. How long from buying or subscribing to Donna does it take to get to Chris's level? And does every agent or broker actually get there?
That's actually a great question. And every agent probably doesn't get there because everybody's style of using is different, right? So there are multiple ways to use the platform. One is like Chris and his team, they log in every day. They look at their customers, their CSRs, their account managers are logging in, looking at specific policy, etc. The other option is that we work with a lot of other brokers, is that we will take these insights and push it back to the agency management system, right? Or we'll push it into a CRM that you might be using. And your team is actually consuming all of these insights there instead of logging onto Donna, right? So you can even use it in that way. So everybody has a different workflow mechanism of how to adopt, where to adopt it. So to that extent, the usage part is simple. The tool is really 2-3 hours of training and you're using it. So it's not a complex tool to use. There's no screen for data entry, so people are only clicking, right? So it's essentially a very simple platform to use from a UI perspective. But really, it's the workflow piece that is more critical, saying how do you integrate into your operations? Like for renewals, do you use it? For whenever there's a renewal 90 days before, this is what we do, right? So those are the kind of things that you do, and incorporate. The more you incorporate that into your operations, the better the value you are going to get out of it, right? Whatever your operations might be in whichever system you might be. Like I said, we already have a Zapier integration. So if you want to push that into Excel or Slack or HubSpot or Salesforce or whatever you like, you can push all of these insights, the sentiment score, the predictions, the recommendations, all of that to wherever, whichever location you love and your team lives.
So, quick follow-up question: very briefly, what are the pros and cons of taking Chris's approach of being, in Donna versus, one of the alternatives, which is looking at it after it's been pushed into Epic or, whatever system the broker is using? Like, I'm not sure I understand what the difference is between those two approaches.
The difference is how your team is used to. So rather than making your team change the way they do things, we kind of adopt it to there. So if Chris's team is used to having multiple screens and logging in, that's easier for them. They like it that way. If your team is more used to using Salesforce and logging into Salesforce every day, let them use it there. So adopting the tool to your workflow rather than other way around.
Okay, so whatever system the agency or brokerage is, sort of most accustomed to, what they're using most of the time, you put the information in there.
Exactly.
Okay, I was misinterpreting. I thought there was some different features or outcomes depending on the situation. It really just, what screen is this guy looking at? That's where we're going to put the output.
Exactly.
The example where Chris used on I think it was a $600,000 FedEx driver that had a high propensity to move. The system, Donna, had flagged that person was not on SmartPay. That was the flag that kicked it into a high propensity to move.
Yeah. So, for example, on a standard home and auto, because an enormous majority of our clients, we hyper focus. We give people two ways to pay. You pay EFT, which is electronically, or you pay in full. So, for example, if a client is not on pay in full or EFT, because Donna AI understands our book of business, it will make a recommendation to move them to either EFT or pay in full. Just like if somebody doesn't have sewer and water backup, or the deductible's $500. We don't sell $500, but we have purchased some small books of business that are $500, and it'll make the recommendation to move that deductible up. So
you've built that in as part of your IP on top of your version of Donna. It said, hey, please show me all the things that are not on SmartPay or have $500 covers, and I'd like to talk to those. I'd like my agents to talk to those. Is that how that worked?
We didn't build it. Donna AI is smart enough to understand our book of business.
Oh, it came with those recommendations?
So it came with that. We didn't put any of that in there. It actually tells me 83% of your clients have sewer and water backup. This client doesn't have sewer and water backup. You may want to recommend it.
That's a clever distinction.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And the most common thing I sit on a couple boards, they're like, well, your people already know what to do. But let's remember, Jeff, you can attain to this, right? Test to this. The people inside of our office, the front lines people, are so buried with work. It is great that it actually just gives it to them. It's been a game changer.
And I got to think, Chris, you could have the cleanest data of any agent or broker in North America. Maybe explain to people why clean data is really critical for Donna to chug, and then what steps you took in your agency to make sure it's clean, to the extent that employees can potentially lose their job if they're not putting data in correctly. Maybe just share that with the listeners. Yeah, I don't think anybody's as hard ass on data as you are that I'm aware of.
Yes, I am, and I'm not nice about it. But I think what really made me not nice about it is if you talk to Anurag, and I'm hoping Anurag will answer this before I answer it. Anurag has explained to me the data is so bad in most independent agencies or brokers, AMS or BMS, that Anurag and his team had to build something to help clean the data up so that they could actually read it. Am I accurate to say that, Anurag?
Yeah, I was going to say that sometimes when we have looked at data, we realize that this tool is great, but it's going to be of no use if the data coming in is not clean, right? So we actually have to build a data quality, index report that tells you which parts of your data are bad, where it needs improvement, etc. So you can first fix it, then use a platform like this or any other platform for that matter. I mean, having clean data is going to help you irrespective of not just for Donna AI, but in general for your operations, for everything. And then you can run that as a report every month and say, hey, is my data quality remaining same or going better or getting worse, and then keep improving.
Wow, Steve, that would be really good for data destruction in Canada if our data quality index is bad because of bad downloads. But anyway, pass back over to Chris. Chris, what do you share with the listeners? What extent you did to get your data clean? VAs and different things you're using to get that clean data to keep it there.
First thing I had to do is go to Hawksoft, Paul Hawkins, the founder, and I said, Paul, I know you're a brilliant man. You created something really good. Who is the person who knows your system as well as you outside of Hawksoft? And he said, Peggy Corbett is the first person. There is nobody that knows our system like Peggy Corbett. So the first thing we did was hire Peggy Corbett to basically look at our processes and procedures that we had. And the first thing she said is, wow, they are way off. So once we learned that, we hired her to rewrite our processes and procedures. And then she, so that we could move forward, we would stop as soon as possible, entering bad data or data in places that it shouldn't be in. So reworked our processes and procedures. And then we went back. And with her help, I spent a tremendous amount of money, but we had a three-prong attack. We spent a bunch of money with a consultant. Peggy helped us clean our data up. We had VAs, and when we had internal staff. And once we got it cleaned up, we now have a process and procedures. Every single day, we have VAs relooking at data to make sure that the data is being properly placed and where it needs to be. On all new business, we wait 2 weeks because we wait for the downloads. And about 70% of our bad data is coming from downloads. Not much we can do about that other than having VAs clean that up. But it's a constant process. We have 7 virtual assistants that we hire direct. And that's all they do is audit data and phone calls, making sure phone calls are being dropped in the management system. So that's how we can keep very, very clean data. And I can assure you, we can still do better.
This is feeling a bit more data science than I had thought or understood. And so I'll put my definition of it on the table in case I'm labeling it wrong or we have different definitions. I think of data engineers as ones to structure the data and keep platforms together so that a good management team can query it and get answers out. So if I want to query my database and say, show me everyone not on SmartPay, there's your list and out you go. Data scientists are explained to me or understood by me as the ones that will bring you insights and connections of things you didn't think to ask. So, hey, upon looking at your entire database, did you realize Wednesday at noon this happens? Similar to your example of $500 cover of, well, 80% of your book doesn't have this. Might you want to look at these? Is that an accurate understanding of the problem or solution benefit that Donna is bringing to the table of, you give me database, you let us map it, we'll start giving you insights that you may not have had?
Correct. And I think one thing I'll add to that is that the other job there is to also build a model that can find those patterns, right? Because the more difficult task is to identify, if you give us the data, that's great. How do we build a model that identifies what patterns to look for? So it's a combination of knowledge of the business and knowledge of data science that you have to kind of marry, right? Because if you look at just from a data science perspective, you'll never realize water sewer backup is an important thing or not, right? like they might miss it, not thinking about it, right?
Right.
So you have to have a combination of the knowledge of the business, how it operates, but also combine it with what variables, what models to build, what data sets to look at, and that. So you're right. I think it's basically finding patterns that you've not thought of, but it's also understanding it from a business lens.
And does it work both ways? So it's going to be spitting out insights, and then on a random Thursday, we have a query of, hey, what is my average age of motorcycle riders? Can we then just pop in that query and assume the same dashboard for insights?
Yeah, so there are two ways. So there's a table where you can build your query, right? You can say, show me all customers who are more than this premium and are likely to leave, or who's likely to buy this, or customers who don't have backup sewer coverage, right? So you can build your own queries, or you can let the system recommend on its own. You can do both.
In terms of sales, you mentioned about cross-sell opportunities. Maybe Chris and Anurag share with the listeners the kind of rich data you can get on the client, whether it's socioeconomic, whether there's hobbies that they get involved in, things like different things you can pull out. And again, I'm not sure everything will be transferable to Canada. It depends what kind of data you get input into your system from third parties, what's allowed, not allowed. But just share with some insight about not only cross-selling, but other information you can glimpse to be able to make selling decisions for your agents, Chris and Anurag.
Well, I love the fact that, coming from the life and financial side of the industry into P&C, what I found that is brokers and agents don't do well is they're afraid to ask the questions of, Jeff, what is your net worth? And that's not a question the property and casualty world feels comfortable asking. So in America, litigation is a big deal. So it actually brings in the average income on the street you live in. So it's allowing our teammates and our customer service retention specialists to be able to call Jeff and recommend Jeff a $5 million umbrella, where in most cases, most agents and brokers are probably, recommending a $1 million umbrella. I know that's happening here in the States. 1 million. Well, 1 million's not in New Canaan, Connecticut. It's 1,500 square foot house on a poster. This tiny little lot goes for 1.79 million. That means a $1 million umbrella is not going to work for that person just based off of the house. So that piece of data that's being brought in is vitally important. The other piece that I absolutely love that's been instrumental is it alerts us with the people in the household. So when your kids turn 16, what we find is when they add their child, they get sticker shock. So we can do a very good renewal with that client. Hey, Jeff, just letting you know you have your kids there. You got one that's going to be 16 coming up. I just want you to know that the carrier we have you with today may be very different than the carrier once your child gets their driver's license. Because there are carriers that are more children friendly than others. So that alerts us and allows us to do a much better job than just calling the agency and saying, hey, I'm adding my kid on, here's his license number. And all of a sudden he gets a $3,000 bill and a little sticker shock. And what happens on sticker shock? They first start calling other agents, other brokers. So that's just a couple pieces of information. Another good piece would be, it lets me know, Jeff does international cruise lines. He loves cruising and international. It actually pulls in how you like to travel, Jeff. You sell travel insurance, it is a home run if you're pushing travel insurance.
Where is it getting that kind of data?
We've got about 4 or 5 different vendors we work with, and we pull external data. So we don't go out to the net and scrape information. We have legal data vendors who sell information. What we do is a matching, and we look at your book and we match that, and we find wherever it's a match, we pull that information and show it to you, right? So essentially, we get roughly, I would say 50 to 60% has been the average hit rate for us. We don't get it for all the customers, obviously, but where I think the hit rate's been about 50 to 60% for getting such external information.
You're not currently available in Canada. Are there plans to migrate north? And if so, what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean the step one. So the short answer is yes, the plans are absolutely there. And step one for that is integrating with the agency management systems, and which is what we are kind of doing a little bit of study. We know obviously Epic with Applied is a popular system. Looking at other systems that are there, we need to fix those integrations. We already work with most of these vendors here, but we need to figure out those vendors. The second part is we are working closely with a few consultants to figure out if there is any data laws that we need to be careful of, which are different from the US, right? So when we're getting this external data in the US, maybe that's going to look different in Canada, and maybe we may not start with that to begin with. So we need to be careful of the laws of the land and make sure we're not violating anything.
What if a broker is trying to look at how would you cost this? And again, I'm sure there's different answers, and again, vague. Like any idea? Like, is it by the client? Is it by your volume? How do you price this product?
Yeah, and we are most transparent on our pricing. It's on our website and it is directly linked to the size of the agency or the brokerage, right? So it depends on the book of business that you have. If you're a $10 million business, you pay, you know, X. If you're a $25 million, you pay X plus, so it's all there on the website and you can look at it. And the only two parameters you need to think of it is total book premium and which AMS, because some AMSs are more expensive than others to integrate with.
So, Jeff, the reason why that is, and I've always pushed Anurag. So, somebody had asked the question, how long? We've been on this for 4 years since he came to America, thanks to Frank Setner. But it actually tells us inside of Donna AI, there's a little system on the side of the name. It actually says how enriched is the data that's coming in. So, obviously, the more clients we have, the more we have to pay because we're pulling and basically asking Donna AI to pull more data in for us. I don't know if they still have a platform where you don't want to pull all the data. Anurag, I know in the beginning some didn't want to pull outside data and it was less expensive, but
Yeah. I mean, we have different packages, so you can say if you don't want external data, then it costs lesser.
but I would say that's crazy not to get that excess data.
But for Canada, we might start without the external data piece to begin with, just from a regulatory perspective.
I would also suggest that when you come to Canada, data is brutally expensive here.
Yeah.
Why? I'm just looking at your pricing on your website, and for what you're telling me it does, and what I've gleaned from it, I see it as really, really reasonable. I do see that when you put AMS supported, you have Epic there, who probably has 80+% market share in Canada. What would be the challenge of big difference between Canada and the American Epic? Is it just the data? What have you even got under the hood in a Canadian brokerage to have a look at?
Yeah, we are already working with Applied and testing, but basically the Epic for Canada and the Epic instance for US are different. So they are different. I mean, it's still called Epic, but it's different. So we need to do a separate integration into that.
So, Chris, my question is a before and after story. If we were to predict what the white paper would look like, what can you talk to us about how your agency looked before using this, and what are the KPIs that moved, or what's the presentation post Donna implementation?
That's a great question. So we work off the EOS system, which we have L10s meetings every single week, which has all of these tracking parameters that we utilize. The number one thing that we were focused on within Donna, the number one thing is how do we sell more policies to more existing clients? And when people ask me why would I want to sell if Jeff is already a client and Anurag isn't? It's way easier for me to sell to somebody who has already purchased because they've already trusted us. So being able to move that needle has been instrumental on, pushing that well above 2 policies per household. When we originally started, I believe we were about 1.67 policies per household. We're roughly about 2.1 presently. And that's been instrumental. Number one. And number two, it's allowed us to change our process and procedures tremendously based on our touch points. We had substantially more touch points 4 years ago than we do today, and we're changing again. We're in the process of actually lowering the touch points because of the data, the centimeter scores, and the information that it's being fed. So the best way to answer that is it was like having a dirty windshield when you're trying to drive, and now we actually have a nice clean windshield. So we can actually see and get a feel on how clients are. Are they happy with us? Are they just satisfied with us, or do they hate us? So that those clean windows has been a great way for us to retain, get our retention scores up and be able to understand our clientele much better, which in the end allows our service staff and our retention strategists to do a much better job and less stress because they have the data to work with what they're walking into when they call out on our renewal call.
You're not guessing anymore.
That is correct.
So Anurag, maybe you can tell us from your perspective, where are you taking the platform? And Chris, maybe you can tell us about what you'd like to see the platform do or what you plan to do with the existing platform in the future. And maybe Anurag, you go first.
Yeah, sure. No, so we have, a pretty busy roadmap that we've already charted. So one big aspect of what we are trying to do is to extend more and more deeper into the commercial line side of things. So, making it more specific, like we took examples of water sewer backup or earthquake insurance, et cetera, et cetera. But we've started the journey of saying, hey, if you are specializing in agriculture, here are specific things we can do. If you specialize in construction, this is more specific things we do. So going deeper into different specific lines of business within the commercial side, I think that's one aspect we are already working on. The second is on the prospect side of things. So today, majority of our predictive analytics sentiment is all on the existing book of business. We don't do much or we don't do anything with prospects and leads, right? So that is the other area we are going to go into, is to identify, hey, I've got this 1,000 prospects, which are the ones that are likely to convert? What are they likely to buy? So instead of wasting time with these, let me just focus on these. So the whole thing around prospect is the second aspect. We've also launched a beta version of our ChatGPT integration. So we actually have it live in our app. So you can actually chat with it and tell me how many customers are having this coverage, right? So you can basically have a chat interface. We are testing it out, and our idea is to make this, fully live with all the questions that you have related to your data without you having to do any query or drop down or tables. You can just chat and get responses. That's the other thing we are working. So these are just some of the ones that are internally. Externally, obviously more integrations with systems. That's on the roadmap, and then the geographic expansion mainly to the Canadian market. That is the next one on our list for sure.
Awesome, great. Chris, you strike me as someone who's constantly looking for ways to improve your business. So maybe talk a bit about where you see your organization taking Donna even further.
I think one of the most critical aspects of this, and I don't think we're far off, I think it comes back to the product even getting better, is tone of voice. I would love to be able to have a sophisticated system that is not only reading. Donna AI today reads the words, but the tone of voice is something that I think will be critical. And I know it's expensive, and I know that that's around the corner. And I don't see that being 3 years out. I see that being 6 months, 9 months out. And I think that's going to be a big game changer. Next to that, I really think that the tool is going to be utilized, and I think some of it has to come down to insurance departments. Because of the amount of data it can pull in, behavior data, I think, is the reason why property and casualty is so far behind when it comes to actuarial numbers behind life insurance. During COVID, how did life insurance go down? That's the $1 million question. it went down, in my personal opinion, is not, the real reason why it went down is because less people died. But I think behavior data is the key behind property and casualty. And I understand that the government has restrictions on what we can use today. And I think that's going to change, because I think it's going to bring more stability, which is going to be better for the consumer, better for the carrier, and of course, better for the agent and broker.
Is retention important to your brokerage? Of course it is. That's why at IFS, we have a cancellation prevention process. Want more details? Give us a call. I know you don't always use a premium finance company, but when you do, you should use IFS. Cheers.